Hi everybody, my name's Amy Bradshaw and I'm the Nen Education Trust Wellbeing Lead, which means it's my job to help to promote and look after everybody's wellbeing, from staff to pupils across all our schools. And I'm really excited to be here with you virtually today to share some ideas and ways for you to help to manage the stress that you might feel in life. And in particular, we're going to focus on managing exam stress in particular, because now that you're in year 11, a lot of the focus is going to be on your GCSEs, and we want you to succeed as best as possible. And we know that stress may be a part and parcel of what you experienced this year, along with all the really good stuff. So we want to give you some really practical tools and tips that are going to help you to manage those moments where things might feel a little bit tricky. So to get us started, I'd like you to discuss as a class the things that cause you stress in your life. Because I could sit here and I could tell you about stress, but I don't live your life. Your stresses may be different to mine. There may be some that we share, but there will undoubtedly be things that are stressful in your life that perhaps aren't stressful in mine, and vice versa. So to make this really as specific as we can, it's really important that we get to the real crux of what is it that brings stress to your day-to-day life. So as a class now, have a discussion, maybe jot down on the board or in your notebooks, what brings you stress in your life? So what I should have said on that last slide as well is adults, teachers, staff in the room, do this as well, because stress is unfortunately part of modern life, and I'm sure the adults that are in the room with you now will be nodding their head and saying, yeah, I experience stress as well. So it'd be really interesting to kind of compare and contrast with the staff that are working with you today on what causes them stress, but also what they do to manage it as well. Because once we acknowledge and accept that stress is a part of modern life, then we're in a much better place to be able to do something about it. So we don't let the stress take us over, that we feel in control of having some things at our fingertips that are going to help us when we're feeling that overwhelm. So as you can see on the board, I've drawn a grid out, and I'd like you to do this too. So I'd like you to have a copy of this, just draw it out in your books or write the headings. It may be that this slide has been printed out for you so you can do it straight onto the grid. But you can see the headings that we've got here. Stresses I have control over, stresses I don't have control over, how stress feels in my body, and things that make me happy. So this is going to give us a rough structure for how the session is going to go. So the first thing that we can start to think about and fill in on our grid is based on the discussion that you've just had. What causes you to feel stressed? What are the things that make you feel stressed? What are the things that bring stress into your life? And I want us to make that distinction, because it can really help us in how we manage it, between the stresses that you have control over and the stresses that you don't. Now you may be sitting there thinking, I don't have control over anything that makes me stressed. If I did, then I wouldn't feel stressed. But actually, once we delve a little bit deeper, we can look at where is that stress coming from, and do I have any control over it? Is there anything I can do to reduce that stress? For some things, there may not be. And those are the things that we don't have control over. So if we can't remove the stress, what we can do is perhaps change our approach to it or our attitude to it. And that in turn can help us to reduce stress and to manage it better. So on the next slide, we're going to look in a bit more detail at the stresses that we have some control over. So based on your last discussion, maybe looking at the list of things that you wrote down, go back and look at that list and do this as a class as well. Which ones on there do you have some control over? Which ones on there could you choose not to do, not to take part in? Which one of those do you have some element of control over that might help us to reduce the stress that we feel? Have a discussion as a class again, and then click onto the next slide. So the big downside with me not being with you there today is that I won't get to hear your feedback and your ideas about what causes you stress and things like that. So I've kind of had to work a little bit blind with doing this and think of some of the things that you may have said. And maybe I've got them right, maybe I haven't, but the important thing about this is you tailor it to yourself. So yours may look different to the person next to you because the stresses in your life may be slightly different. There's likely to be crossover, but what's really important is you think very, very particularly about yourself and your circumstances. So when we think about stresses that we have control over, as you can see, I filled in 2 ideas on the grid. I've put friends and relationships. Now you might think, rightly so, yes, sometimes friends do cause us stress, perhaps when things aren't going well, and in relationships as well. When things aren't going well, it can cause us stress, and do I have any control over that? Now in black and white terms, we could say if a friend or a partner or somebody we're in a relationship with is causing us to feel unhappy and unkind, we could walk away from that situation, sometimes temporarily, sometimes permanently, but we do have that element of control, and that's why I've put it in this box. Maybe as a result of your class discussion you've got some other ideas that go in here. So in this box are the things that we want to think about. What can I say no to? What can I walk away from? And when we look onto the next box, where there are things that perhaps we don't have control over, we would like to say no to them, or we'd like to walk away from them, but for the situation we're in right now, the place we're in our life, we may not be able to do that. So this is why we want to make the distinction between the two. Maybe you'd put over here the stresses you feel when you're playing on a team. Maybe the worry and stress of being in a dance show, or doing music exams or something like that. The exams themselves maybe we have no control over, but do we have a choice about whether or not we take those exams, for example? So have a discussion here about what you would put in this box. And maybe we can have a copy that's up on the board and we add some ideas in, but tailor it to your specific life, your specific circumstances, the things that we can say no to, the things that we can walk away from, whether temporarily or permanently. And just because we have friends and relationships in this box doesn't mean it's not going to appear in the other box, like things that make me happy, because life isn't as clear cut as things make us happy or sad. Things can make us happy and at the same time sad, can't they? Or stressed or overwhelmed. So think really carefully, have a discussion, fill in that box. Pause the narration here for a second. So maybe there's some things on there that you're really not sure of. Are they things you have control over, or are they things you don't have control over? If there are any like that are maybe a little bit ambiguous, they don't seem to fit into one or the other, just pop them in the middle, kind of on the line. Because again, life isn't clear cut, that maybe there are certain situations where sometimes we have control and other times we don't. So we can pop it in the middle. So the next slide is going to be the stresses we don't have control over, and you've probably already started to think about, by shifting over and thinking about what I do have control over, you're already having some awareness of what you don't have control over. So as we click onto the next slide now, we're going to explore that in a little bit more detail. So as you can see, I have already put a couple of ideas into the stresses I don't have control over box. First off, I've put exams. For you, this must be at the forefront of your mind with mocks coming up, and then later in the year your actual GCSEs. But alongside that, I've also put homework. This is something when I've done stress workshops with year 11s before, it's something that they often talk about, particularly when it comes to revision time, when they perhaps are revising but they also have homework alongside it, and there's this kind of dual thing happening between having to revise quite focused hard work revision heading straight for the exams, and then the homework that is coming on board obviously which has a purpose and a benefit, but it can feel like it causes a bit of a conflict at the time. I've also added in there family issues. Now this could cover a whole range of different things, from having an argument with mum or dad about not being allowed out, or to other much bigger issues. I've added life events on there, and again that covers all manner of different things that can happen in our life, from bereavements to family separation to relationship breakdowns, those sorts of things that do happen in our life and are often unexpected, and we often aren't able to prepare for them because we don't necessarily know that they're coming. And illness as well, not necessarily just serious illness, but illness that causes us to have time off, where we might feel we're missing things, and then there's a period of time where we have to catch up. All of these things I would put into stresses I don't have control over. You may have come up with some other ones, or it may be that you can be more specific about your circumstances to add in what is it in particular about family or life events that cause you stress. You might even break up the exam heading by the different areas of exams and being in year 11 that are particularly causing you stress. So pause the narration here and have a go at just filling out that box and add in as much detail as you can. There's likely to be more things in this box than there were in the first box. More things that we feel like we don't have control over. So we will return to the stresses we have control over and the stresses we don't when we start to think about what we can do to actually manage that stress and work with it. But before we get to that point, there's a couple of other things we need to think about that are going to really arm us with all the tools that we might need to be able to deal with stress as it arises in our lives. So the next part of our grid is noticing how stress feels in our bodies. And you can see the things that I've put on the board as a starting point for you. But I'd really like you to tune in and recall a time when you have felt stress and notice what did that actually feel like in your body. So some of the things that I experience when I'm stressed, and you may feel these too, is you get that pain in your head, maybe like a permanent headache, maybe just tightness or tension in your head. Sometimes we feel tension in our jaw because perhaps we've clenched our teeth together. This is particularly a sign that we're stressed. We grind our teeth at night. It's subconscious and we don't even know we're doing it, but maybe we wake up in the morning and our jaw's aching, or we've got what we call a tension headache. We might notice that our heart beats a bit faster when we're stressed, so it may feel like a racing heartbeat, or just being very aware of our heart, and therefore maybe we're breathing slightly differently as well. You might feel like a tension or a tightness in your muscles. So something I notice when I'm stressed is my shoulders suddenly get much higher up, and when I notice that, I have to really drop them down. And we might also notice a feeling in our tummy, so like a stomach ache or a sick feeling. Sometimes it's a bit like butterflies for me, almost like a nervous feeling. So before you click onto the next slide, have some time to think about what stress feels like for you, really noticing where you feel it in your body and even what it feels like. Maybe you notice like a tingling in your hands or certain feelings in your legs. Write down everything that you experience in your body when you're in those moments of stress, and share those as a class as well. See if anybody else experiences stress in the same way you do. The chances are that they do. But what's really important is that we bring our attention and our awareness to how it feels in our body when we're feeling stressed, because this is almost like an early warning sign. We notice in our body what's going on. If we are able to notice that, we are much more likely to be able to work with it before it overwhelms us. So pause the narration now, have a chat with the people sitting next to you, share it back as a class, and think about these things. What does stress actually feel like in my body? So lastly, we're going to think about things that make us happy. And this is a really important element of managing and dealing with stress, because we can see that the things that bring us joy, the things that make us happy, can be a real antidote to those stressful moments that we might be experiencing. And once we've filled this box with all the things that might bring us joy or make us happy, we're going to have a ready-made toolkit, if you like, for things that we can go to in the moment when we're feeling stressed. So some of the things I've put on here, these don't all relate to me, but things that I tried to anticipate maybe things that you might find bring you happiness, are things like friends and family. So this is where I mentioned earlier that yes, we've put friends and family in some of the things that cause us stress, but they undoubtedly at times also bring us great joy and happiness as well. Pets is a really good one on there. Pets often offer us real comfort and a chance, if we own a dog for example, a chance to get out and go for a walk, which is obviously really good for us. I've put hobbies on there. You guys have probably got all sorts of hobbies, so for you, you can put specifically what your hobbies are. Maybe listening to music is something that brings you joy. Maybe dancing. Maybe there's a particular sport that you enjoy. Maybe going to the gym, working out. Maybe gaming. Maybe beauty, you know, doing hair, doing nails, doing your facial routine. Maybe that makes you happy and brings you joy. Maybe getting outside and being in nature. So write down the things for you and really try and pack this box with as many things as you can think of. And you might want to share them with other people on your table, share them back as a class. If we can fill this box with as many things as we can, it's going to set us in really good stead for when we start to think about how can we actually manage and work with our stress. So now we've filled in on our boxes, we need to think about how we can use some of this information and knowledge to help us in those really tricky moments. So as we talked about already, the stresses that you have some control over, once we notice that those are the things causing us stress, and maybe we've noticed that because of we've been more aware of how stress feels in our body. So when we notice that headache or notice that feeling in our tummy, notice that something is causing us stress, then noticing that we have some control over it, we can act on it. So the important thing is the noticing. The next step is acting on it. So in a moment where perhaps friends or your relationships are causing you some stress, noticing it and then acting on it, whether that means just walking away for a moment, taking a break in the moment so that you can have some space and you can calm down, can help to reduce our stress. There may be times when we need to look at the bigger picture and think, if this person is causing stress as an ongoing thing, do you have to make a choice about whether or not they deserve to have your time and your attention? That can be a hard decision to make, and it can lead us to feeling like we don't have any control over it, because that can feel very final. But the other thing is that when we have these situations that we perhaps have got some control over, and we can choose how much we take part in these activities that are causing us some sort of stress with some people. The other thing is that perhaps if we've had an interaction that has caused us to feel stressed, or there's something happening within that particular friendship or relationship that is causing us to feel stressed, we can go to that box of things that make us happy. So when we've had time with someone and we've come away feeling stressed, what is it out of that box of things that make us happy that can help to recharge our batteries? This is where we can see the balance between moments of stress and then doing things that are going to help us to recharge. So we can notice how it feels in our body, recognise that we're stressed. Then we can think, well, what can I do about that? How can I act on that? Do I need to walk away for a moment? Do I need to stay? Let's stop, take a break, and then we'll have a go again later. We'll come back and finish off the conversation. Following those interactions, can we do something from our brings me joy box? Take our pets for a walk, sit and cuddle our pets, listen to some of our favourite music, go and work out in the gym or play on our games, take a walk outside. These things can help to boost our feeling of well-being, particularly after we've felt stressed. And hopefully then we will see that our stress reduces, those feelings in our body reduce, and we see our well-being restored. The things on the other side, the stresses that we don't have control over, this can be a little bit trickier. For example, when we're in the middle of our exams, whether they're mocks or actual exams, maybe we're revising, maybe we're feeling the pressure from school, maybe we're feeling pressure from home, maybe that pressure is just coming from us internally, maybe we're just expecting a lot from ourselves. It's difficult to say, I'm going to walk away from that, because exams is where our focus is at the moment. So a couple of things we can do. Again, we can notice where we feel it in our body when we're starting to get stressed about our exams, whether it's about the revision, whether it's about thinking about the exams, whether it's about thinking about the results. Notice how it feels in your body. Is it your heart beating faster? Is it that feeling in your tummy like a knot or a tightness? The next thing we can do is, once we've noticed it, just try breathing with it. So taking some big deep breaths and seeing the way that when we take those deep breaths and we just stop for a minute, we can help things to settle down. It can take a bit of practice, but it is worth practicing it. Even in the moment, in the middle of an exam, when you maybe feel overwhelmed, just stopping, taking that deep breath, it helps to wake up our thinking brain and settle those feelings in our body, so we're able to then carry on. Sometimes when we're stressed, our thinking brain shuts down. It's not great in an exam, is it, if our thinking brain has stopped working? So pausing and taking that big nourishing deep breath can really help to just wake up our thinking brain, let everything settle down, so we're ready to carry on. The other thing that we can do is we can draw on these things that make us happy while we're preparing for our exams or while we're doing our homework. So for example, if music is something that brings you joy, why not listen to some suitable music while you're revising, while you're doing your homework? Why not eat some of your favourite foods while you're revising? So we add this, what we call a nourishing edge, to what can be quite a draining activity. So if revising and preparing for exams is something you really dread and you don't look forward to, add in things that you do look forward to. Maybe every 10 minutes plan in a break where you get up and move your body, do some workouts or whatever it might be. Maybe you listen to some music that you really enjoy. Maybe you have your favourite biscuits or your favourite snacks next to you while you're working. Maybe every 10 to 15 minutes you plan in a 5-minute gaming break, so that you're breaking it up. It's almost like a little reward to ease you through these stressful moments. So there's two techniques there. First of all, in the moment, feeling those feelings in your body that stress can cause us, those very physical signs that we're stressed. We can breathe through it. We stop, we pause, we breathe, and we notice the feelings settle. They might come up again, but we know that our breath is always there to help us through that moment. The other thing is we can add these nourishing elements to when we're preparing for our exams or doing our homework. Fill in the gaps in your time with the things that lift you up, that make you feel good. We can do that with homework as well, can't we? Family issues, life events and illness, they can be slightly different and more difficult to add a nourishing edge to. Maybe if we're having lots of arguments with our parents over different issues at home, something that's very normal and happens in all houses with teenagers across the country, but for you at the time it can feel really draining, and there's a sense of real unfairness, isn't there? You're at a real crossroads in your life right now where you feel on the verge of adulthood and yet still within the constraints of having to be treated like a child sometimes. So that can lead to a lot of frustration on everybody's part. So maybe noticing when we're having these difficult interactions and following them up with something that makes you feel good. So if you're noticing you're really stressed because there's lots of arguments going on or people just getting at each other, maybe moving your body, maybe getting outside, maybe doing that hobby that you enjoy, that's going to counterbalance those feelings that you're having. It doesn't take them away, but we recognise they're causing us a bit of stress. What can I do to balance things out? And those are true for life events and illnesses as well. So just noticing when we're feeling stressed and making a good choice to do something that boosts us up. We can always also work with the breath, just like we talked about with exams. In the middle of an argument, or in the middle of things being difficult at home, we can pause and take that moment to just take a deep breath. And in that moment, we can perhaps stop reacting and respond in a way that allows us to not feel so stressed. It's difficult. I'm saying it like it's really easy. It takes practice. So practicing that pause and breathe is really worthwhile, because it can just help everything to settle down. The other thing that we can do, as well as using our breath, as well as using our things that make us happy to add nourishing, boosting moments to our day, the other thing that we can do is try and change our attitude or our approach to these things. This is hard and it can take a bit of practice again, but it's really worth having a go. So particularly with life events or family issues, we can see those arguments, parents nagging, giving us a hard time, all those things. We can see those as really annoying and frustrating and perhaps unnecessary. We could reframe it. We can approach it from the point of view of saying, these people really care about me and they want the best for me. And so once we see their nagging in the context of actually they just want me to succeed, that can be really helpful. Not always, and maybe we can't see that until afterwards, but holding that in our mind can really help, especially when we're dealing with difficult life events. Reminding yourself that you have people that care about you, there's people with you going through this with you, that can really help. In terms of exams and homework, this is one point in your life, and this is really a gateway to everything that comes next. Now that in itself can be a little bit scary, but when so much focus seems to be on this end point of the exams, and then we think, well, this is just getting me to a point where I can then do what I want to do next. So we can reframe our exams as, if I can do my very best at this point, it's going to give me much more choices after that. Maybe you're already thinking you want to go to sixth form, maybe you're already thinking you want to go to college or into the world of work or an apprenticeship. Doing your absolute best at this point, it's only one moment in time. At this point, putting your all into doing this gives you those choices beyond. So reframing it, thinking in those moments where the revision is the last thing you want to do, more homework is the last thing you want to do, reframing it, I've just got to get through this, and this is a gateway to all the other stuff that comes after it, all the other stuff I can't wait to get onto. Reframing that can be really helpful. Sometimes you might need reminding, and that's okay, we all do. But hopefully now we're starting to build up a toolkit of things that can help us. Noticing the feelings in our body, noticing the things that make us stressed, noticing if we have any control over them and acting on that, noticing what we can do to boost us up and add a nourishing edge to those things that maybe make us feel stressed, and also noticing, can I change my attitude or my approach to this? Now on the next slide there is a short animation which helps to explain a little bit more about what's going on for us when we're feeling stressed. You can stop it at around about 2 minutes and 8 seconds. There is the rest of the practice that comes next, which is a particularly good one for helping you to sleep at night. I'll talk a bit more about that after you've watched the animation. So in that animation we can see that our brain reacts to stressful, difficult situations in a very primitive way. Our brain hasn't changed in millennia in the way that it reacts when things get difficult. So often our stress response comes from a place where it's almost subconscious. We're not even thinking about it. And that's why if we can notice the feelings in our body, it's like an early warning sign that we are feeling stressed. Like it also said in the practice, stress can lead to us not sleeping well, which is why that practice is so great, and it's available on YouTube. If you just type in .b, this will come up. That one's called Meditation, which is really great for helping you to sleep, or if you're frequently waking in the night because you're feeling stressed and you've got things on your mind. On the next slide, we've got a practice which we're going to have a go at doing now if there's time left in the session. And this is a mindfulness practice that's going to allow us to focus and concentrate. Because one thing we know is when we're stressed, often we feel very distracted. Our mind is all over the place with thoughts. So bringing mindfulness practices like this into our daily routine can be really helpful to help us to focus and concentrate, and to learn how we can guide our attention back to where we need it to be in those moments when we're feeling very stressed. So enjoy having a go at doing this practice. I really look forward to hearing some feedback on how you've done in this session and how your curriculum day has gone. And I really look forward to seeing you in person later in the year. I should be in school in the spring term around about exam time, running drop-in sessions. So if you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed, we'll have a chance to chat in person then. And I really look forward to just hearing how you're getting on, and I wish you every success for the rest of this school year.